Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so we're live now.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Welcome, everyone, to the Economic Development Committee meeting. Due to COVID-19 pandemic, Regional Council meeting is practicing physical distancing, and all of the councillors are participating electronically. In an attempt to speed things up, we have assigned a mover and a seconder, and I'll read these out. I will then state the result of the vote. I'm now going to call on Tim Brubaker to conduct our roll call.
Thank you, Chair Jowett. So, Chair Jowett? Councillor Erb?
Here.
Present.
Councillor Galloway?
Present.
Councillor Harris?
Hi there, present.
Councillor Jaworski?
Present.
Councillor Kiefer?
Present.
Councillor McGarry?
Present.
Chair Redman? Chair Redman? And Councillor Verbanovic. Okay, so Councillor Verbanovic is absent. Chair Redman was in the room. She might just be right back there. I can see her on the screen now. So all present except for Councillor Verbanovic.
Hey, thanks so much, Tim. Much appreciated. We will now have a motion to reconvene into open session. This will be motioned by Councillor Harris and seconded by Councillor Erb. Please use your buttons to vote. And that is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so I'm actually looking to see if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. So I'm scanning the Zoom. Scan. Seeing none. There are no registered delegations, but there is a presentation, and it's, Rod, are you ready?
I am ready, Chair Jowett.
I'm so excited about this presentation, Rod. I think we know why. Okay, go.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair Jowett and councillors for the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you. I'm just going to share my screen here. Hopefully the technology gremlins don't interfere. So please let me know, is that an appropriate scale? Can you see that? Is that a full size present? Yeah? Okay, good. Okay, excellent. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time with you in discussion about some of the ongoing projects in East Side Lands particularly, and how they connect with this larger concept of a competitive regional economy. Because we often get a look at individual projects, but sometimes we don't take enough time to think about the implications of those projects in the larger context, as well as the relationship potentially with each other, and particularly over the longer term. So, this is this cover page here illustrates the general geography of the east side of Waterloo region. It's got a number of ongoing developments highlighted for us on the bottom and on the left-hand side of the screen. You'll see, well, bottom center of the screen, you'll see the outline of the Central Transit Corridor. You'll see the industrial area of North Cambridge outlined, particularly with the Toyota Manufacturing Canada plant outlined in salmon color there. You'll see that the yellow ovals identify a number of residential developments. One, the ROPA 2 developments north of Block Line and at the corner of Middle Block and or Middle Block rather, and Fountain Street, which is yet to receive yet to have its secondary plan finished yet, but it's well underway. And then, of course, YKF, our Waterloo Region International Airport. And then at the top of the screen, the community of Breslau with the outline of the GO Rail connection to Toronto, and particularly the Breslau GO station as a future project. So this is just highlighting a number of the projects that are ongoing. Major priorities for economic development in Waterloo region, and I think it's important to think about how they might connect with one another and what some of the implications might be for the long run. I've labeled this presentation WR 2051 because that's the time frame that we are contemplating right now for the regional official plan review. The province has asked us to think about land use policy over the next 30 years. And so this is and that's actually the appropriate frame of reference for not only land use planning, but also an economic development strategy. So I'll just go to the next slide. The objectives here are to establish some context for the ongoing work on the East Side lands, to briefly discuss the major status of major projects, and to illustrate the relationship between some of these projects, which I think we haven't had much of an opportunity to discuss recently. So this is a slide which some of you will have seen before, but perhaps not all of us. It's a slide that we developed in order to build the business case for two-way all-day GO rail service from connecting Toronto and Waterloo region. And what it illustrates is the similarities between the San Francisco Bay Area, commonly known as Silicon Valley, and the Toronto to Waterloo Innovation Corridor. Silicon Valley is anchored on the one end by San Francisco and on the other end by San Jose. Both of these cities have international airports. Interestingly, San Jose has an urban population of about 1.2 million people. The Waterloo region is at the other end of a corridor connected to Toronto by the 401, and they are almost identical in their distance between San Francisco, San Jose, and Toronto and Waterloo region. And very interestingly, both of those communities have airports. Both sets of communities have airports approximately the same distance apart. There is a rail core. It's a nascent rail corridor in the case of the Toronto Waterloo corridor. In Southern California, or in the Bay Area of California, the rail service is well established, and actually they have high-speed rail under development in that corridor. But I think my subtitle here is that global hubs require strong secondary airports. We've had many conversations with over the future vision for YKF. You can see that in the Bay Area, San Francisco has an important airport. San Jose, Oakland in the London, UK system, you've got Heathrow, Stansted, and Gatwick. New York is served by three important airports, primary airports, as well as a number of secondary airports. And in the Toronto corridor, you can see that YKF, Toronto Pearson, and Hamilton play a similar role in terms of providing air service to a large metropolitan population. And in the context of this conversation, one of the key points I want to make is that innovation economies, and we need to make sure we keep our eye on this ball. We are actually competing with Silicon Valley. We are competing with New York. We're competing with London, UK, for high value employment, for investment, and for for development. In our particular context, the labor market, well, actually, in all of these metropolitan economies, it's the labor market that's driving growth, and the climate for innovation supported by that labor market. And the reason I've drawn a slightly larger circle around this particular slide, or the Waterloo region with the city of Guelph here, is that, you know, we have amongst in the larger service area of Metrolinx, the transportation between Guelph and Kitchener, Guelph and Cambridge are some of the strongest commuter flows that we have, and we're drawing a tremendous amount of talent for Kitchener and Waterloo and Cambridge businesses out of Guelph, and we're providing a fair amount of labor for businesses in Guelph from our communities as well. So there's a significant flow of regional commuters within that area. And the reason that's important is because it creates a much larger base from which to work with to build businesses and support investment. We see the response of a company like Flair, for example, locating at Waterloo Region International Airport. Well, Flair is looking to serve all of the 850-some thousand people that live in Waterloo Region, Wellington County, and Guelph, because that airport is right in the middle of almost 1 million people. And you can see how businesses who locate in our region would think strategically about where their labor force is located, and how the people that work for them move between their homes and their businesses. I bring up Southern California, because we have many businesses that are in common. We have many startups that have located both in Waterloo Region and Silicon Valley, but we've also got major global corporations like Google and others with major offices in this region and in California. I bring up this slide here, which illustrates the interconnected nature of rail transportation in the Bay Area. One of the most significant differences between the Bay Area and the Toronto Waterloo corridor is the investment that they've made in commuter rail service. And here you can see that there are actually 5 major pieces of rail infrastructure that 4 of them actually are operational now, connecting the Central Valley with the Bay Area. And then on top of that, they're layering in the high-speed rail connection between Southern California and the Bay Area. And Dearborn Station is at the center of all of that, which is the train station in San Jose, California. Interestingly, the fellow that's responsible for planning the Dearborn Station grew up in Guelph and has a degree in urban design from the University of Toronto. So we've got a Canadian spy in taking a close look at how the rail system is being developed in Southern California. But the key message here on this slide is how interconnected that system is, and in order to deliver efficient rail services to the people of the Bay Area.
Rod, can you hang on just a second?
Yep.
It's just because you're giving us so much information, and I see Kiefer has a question. Carl, do you want to ask it before we get more of all of this data that Rod's providing to us?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was going to ask Rod. I love the slide, the one before this, where you're comparing San Francisco to what's happening here. But I was just wondering if you could somewhere on there could add Cambridge, the actual word Cambridge. I see you got Kitchener, Waterloo, And I know, and I do know you noted that you identified Waterloo region, but Cambridge is not on there, and that it's a sore spot with me.
No, that's my oversight. I apologize for that, for sure. I totally thank you very much for pointing that out. Appreciate that.
So I don't mean to point the finger at you, Rod, but when we're showing these maps, like to our provincial counterparts, for sure, and federal, sometimes they forget that when they always talk about the region of Waterloo, they somehow forget Cambridge. But
yeah, I think that's a really important point, Councillor Kiefer, and I have to confess here, I was moving perhaps a little bit too quickly on stealing this slide from another presentation, and I didn't take a close look at that, but you'll see later on in the presentation that is actually exactly the point of the entire exercise. So,
no, I love the slide. I love the slide, Rod.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Councillor Kiefer.
Thank you.
So, Rod, can I just add, while you're presenting that slide, I love that slide as well. Look, are you comparing population density? Is the circumference geographically comparable as well? The net dollars that are created in economic development, and then of course employees hired and those kinds of quantifiers, because that might be an interesting sort of add to the data, because that slide is amazing, and I think those quantifiers could be helpful if they're relative.
Yeah, well, the key, actually, if you think about the metropolitan area of Toronto and the Waterloo region, and reach as far as Hamilton, the population in the Greater Toronto, Hamilton, Waterloo areas is actually larger than the Bay Area. It's our economies. They've got a higher density of technology firms, but actually we're right up behind them in our startup economy, our startup ecosystem. So it's an interesting point of comparison. I'm not arguing that that Bay Area is our benchmark for performance. But I just want to point out that there are some similarities which are important to take note of, and those similarities actually play out in numerous economies around the world where innovation is driving growth and driving development. So the London, UK, and Cambridge. London, UK, and Cambridge, Oxford. That's an important innovation economy. Tel Aviv, Haifa in Israel. There are, very significant innovation economies in southern India, as Matthew can attest. So, I think it's important that we think carefully about the way that we position the Waterloo region and Toronto corridor as an innovation economy operating at on the global stage. That's the environment that we are competing against for investment. So here I've got a slide which illustrates the growth that we are projected by the provincial government to experience over the next 3 decades. And the region is forecast to reach a population of approximately 925,000 people, and our economy is forecast to grow by 194,000 jobs. Approximately 60,000 of those jobs are going to be coming out of manufacturing, warehousing, and logistics. So those are the classical employment lands, industrial lands type of employment. And it's not an insignificant number of jobs. This is a really vital part of our regional economy. It's those are the high quality jobs that left a good chunk of the U.S. Midwest over the last couple of decades. It's vitally important that we maintain good manufacturing and warehousing and logistics employment in the Waterloo region. And this is a map which illustrates where many of those jobs are going to be located in the region. The pink or fuchsia colored areas are the employment lands in each of the communities in the Waterloo region. And you'll see in the center of the region, or at the bottom, in the center of the image, that large fuchsia area. Those are the southern that's an employment area, a large area of employment lands in North Cambridge, which are currently being serviced and developed. The service area for what's known as the East Side lands, this is the study area of the East Side lands, runs between the boundary of Waterloo region on the left. That's Sean Station Road, which is the countryside line on the right-hand side, and the CN North Main line on the north, and then all the way down to Highway 8 on the south. And you'll see in the bottom of the slide blue line, which indicates how some of these lands will be serviced out of the Kitchener wastewater treatment facility. The total study area here is 2,600 hectares, 2,640 hectares, over 6,000 acres. A good chunk of this land, partially because of the proximity to the airport, will be employment lands, and probably we're probably in the long run looking at 1,000 hectares of land. We have about 300 hectares of land under development now, employment lands. 200 net hectares of employment lands under development now with Hoop and Intermarket. And there will be more that'll be incorporated into the urban area, or will be developed over the next several years as the sanitary trunk is extended. But it's not an insignificant amount of land. It's significant at a provincial scale, and we hope to get support for this project from the provincial government through the Job Sites Challenge, which Matthew and Tony Tony LaMantia have been instrumental in helping us pull together. So here is an image of the sanitary trunk, which is under construction right now. My understanding, I didn't drive out there, I haven't driven out there recently, but my understanding is that the trunk is basically in the ground all the way to Allendale Road right now. The image on the left-hand side of the screen indicates where the trunk is being constructed. So if you can see my cursor there, the first segment of the red is line is being constructed. Over the next year, it'll be constructed up to Middle Block and then over to Fountain Street to provide servicing for some residential development on the north end of the northern portion of North Cambridge, the lands we know as the ROPA 2 lands. But the center slide outlines the employment lands that are being serviced by this trunk. The blue lands being developed by Intermarket, and the gray or the brown lands are being developed by iPort, which is a company of a land development company owned by Hoop, which is the hospital employees of Ontario pension plan. It's one of the largest pension plans in pension funds in Canada, and they own large employment parks around North America and in Europe as well. So this is classic large block employment, industrial land development, and it's going to result in a very significant amount of investment in the Waterloo region with a significant number of jobs. I think the capacity for employment just in the first several phases of this project would be in excess of 5,000. I've heard as many as 7,500 jobs in this area over the next little while. It remains to be seen because the number of jobs on any given site is determined by the nature of the business itself, right? So, but it's not an insignificant amount of employment that we'll be seeing developed in this area over the relatively near future. So I want to speak with you a little bit here about the concept of connecting the Waterloo region and the East Side lands. And the reason I think this is important is because if we're going to see as many as 40,000 jobs in the next 30 years up in the East Side lands, we have to determine whether or not all of those jobs will be the journey to all of those jobs will be through single occupancy vehicle trips, or whether they will be using a more sustainable form of transportation, and particularly transit. And so I thought it would be important to illustrate the strategic location of the East Side lands relative to our investments in transit thus far. So we've now finished the construction of ION Phase 1, which is essentially moving people between South Central Kitchener and North Waterloo. And I've illustrated here the King and Victoria Transit Hub at the roughly at the center of that system. And we've talked about for many years, and we now see Metrolinx really fully engaged in the process of developing an inbound GO Rail service into Central Kitchener, into the King and Victoria Transit Hub, to connect to that ION Phase 1, because there will be a significant number of rail commuters moving back and forth through the existing network, the transit network. And the business community in the Waterloo region has said very clearly that they need to have access to the labor market in the west end of Toronto, in Toronto generally, in order to support their growth. And the most reliable way of delivering that service is through rail transit. But we also know that there's a significant flow of commuters and citizens towards Toronto as well. So this concept of the CN North Main Line, the Metrolinx service between Toronto and Waterloo, is inherently a two-way flow of people and workers. But that's really, and that planning work for that two-way all-day GO service is now underway. Metrolinx is moving forward with the detailed work on the corridor. You'll see ongoing upgrading of infrastructure over the next little while, and hopefully the province will pull the trigger on a major build on that corridor in the next little while. But it's only part of the picture. If you think about Phase 2 ION takes us, connects Cambridge to Councillor Kiefer's point. It's a really important piece of infrastructure that will connect the labor market in Cambridge and the employers in Cambridge with the labor market in the rest of the Waterloo region, and the employers in the rest of the Waterloo region by higher order transit, by rail transit. and it becomes the spine of transit service that facilitates the efficient movement of people between their homes and their jobs. It's a connection between Cambridge and between Road and Guelph in the Metrolinx system. Now we're some distance from having an agreement with Metrolinx to have that service established, but the feasibility study, is looking promising, and this is you can see here from the geography that it's almost that a potential multimodal station in Cambridge is almost as close to the Guelph, the Metrolinx and Via station in Guelph as downtown Kitchener is. So the potential to connect Cambridge as far south as Galt to the Metrolinx system by the ION Phase 2 project is a really interesting proposition. And here you can see that if you think about the relationship between the East Side lands and the ION Phase 2, you could think strategically about Fountain Street as being a potential transit corridor connecting the Breslau GO station and the Preston ION station, and all of the potential users along the way. And I'll just briefly go through some of those in the next slide. Of course, there has been a conversation with between the region and Cambridge and MTO Metrolinx about the CP corridor and potentially extending the CP the GO rail service out of Milton along the CP corridor. And that has not turned out to be a productive conversation for a whole variety of reasons, which are appear to be unresolvable in the short run. But I think the key message for me here is that the Fergus subdivision from Hespeler to Guelph actually does have some potential. And I know that our transportation will be bringing that feasibility study back to council for some discussion in the next little while. So here, this slide simply illustrates some of the potential connections here between the Breslau GO station. On the far left-hand side of this slide, you'll see that the location of the Breslau GO station at the south end of the Thomas Field development along the CN North main line is a red dot with a dashed line around it. And you can see that there's a logical connection between that station and Menno Street and Fountain, the intersection of Menno Street and Fountain, where in the future the Ottawa Street connection will be located. The township of Woolwich is doing the EA right now on the Ottawa Street connection between Woolwich and Fountain Street, and you could see in the future how that intersection would actually facilitate a movement between Woolwich and the city of Kitchener in the Ottawa Street corridor, which has significant potential for intensification in the future. And then further to the south, a connection to the Waterloo Region International Airport, the main GA campus, the home of our Canada's largest, or one of Canada's largest flight schools, and a significant the potential for some significant air passengers in the relatively near future. let's say 2 or 3 months from now. The center image here illustrates potential connections between Menno Street and YKF, and then further south to a town center, which is contemplated for a community node contemplated for the intersection of Middle Block and Fountain Street. There are, to the right of, to the left of Fountain Street in this area will be approximately 2,500 homes, some 5,000 residents, a small commercial node here at the intersection of Middle Block and Fountain Street, which will support community services for not only the local residents, but also the employees working in the larger industrial park to the south. And then a connection to Maple Grove Road, where you see major employers, Toyota manufacturing, large employers in that Toyota supply chain, but also many independent companies that are manufacturing in this area. And then, of course, at Hagee, Conestoga College has purchased a property, a very significant property for a college. It creates the potential for students to be part of the transit connection between Fountain Street and Cambridge. And then down at the bottom, you can see the potential to connect to the Preston GO station. So Fountain Street becomes, in this view, in the long run, an important corridor that would link the ION network in the south and all of Cambridge to an enormous number of jobs in the manufacturing, warehousing, to the college, to community residential community in North Cambridge, the airport, and then up to the GO station, which we'll hopefully put together in the next little while. So here's the kind of the summary image in my view that illustrates the way that we start to compete in terms of labor mobility with a place like Silicon Valley by connecting Cambridge, Waterloo, Kitchener, and Guelph into a kind of an integrated labor market that is able to compete at a global level in the innovation economy. So that's my last slide. I'll just leave it there and turn it back to you, Chair Jowett, for discussion and questions.
Thanks, Rod. I think this has been the best presentation strategically that we've seen on all of this. So I really do appreciate the extra efforts that have gone into it. I noticed that Tony LaMantia had his hand up, and I'm sorry. I was looking for a strategic time to interrupt. Tony, did you want to add anything to this thus far?
Thanks, Chair Jowett. Actually, it was more of a comment and a question that was addressed by Rod about when we market Waterloo region abroad, it's really not about benchmarking against Silicon Valley or the Bay Area as much as that, Highway 401 and Highway 101 comparison when you flip that north-south is a useful construct. It's really more about, Waterloo region being a globally significant brain belt, with impressive global reach, compelling talent, and the only comment I'll make is it's really good to see that that there is a broader view of the integration of, transit and the connection to Toronto and air. I mean, it's not the random development of the east side lands, right? It's deliberate, which is really important, and it's strategic. And given that the Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo census metropolitan area continues to be 1 or 2 in terms of national growth, and that's likely to continue, then this makes the job of marketing Waterloo region, much more compelling, especially when you can show pictures of the sanitary trunk coming in. I mean, that for site selectors, that makes it real. And I'll just leave, I'll end off on the fact that I love, Fountain Street is so aptly named, isn't it? It's almost like, think about the Tigris Euphrates River and that its historic significance in terms of the development of agriculture. So I love that it's a very key connector to the future growth of the region. But no, Rod answered the point, which is it's really not about benchmarking, but it's more about how our region distinguishes itself, cuts through the clutter around the world. So when people think of Tel Aviv, Haifa, London, Cambridge, San Jose and San Francisco, it's the, kind of Toronto Waterloo region corridor becomes something that they can really understand. So that's it.
Thanks for that, Tony. Councillor McGarry.
Thank you, Chair Jowett, and through you, really excited to see this. And I would concur with Tony's comments about the deliberate way that we're attacking the transit piece of it, because it's not just access to that particular node, but it's all the other components that are really important. I would say that the Cambridge Go connection, when you put it on the map like this, Rod, really does show why it needs to be a triangulated piece. So it connects east and west, north and south, and gives this ability for an employer or an employee or just a resident, the ability to use higher order transit and still access these lands. And I think it comes closer to the goal of having a Cambridge to Guelph connection. It gives more of a business case, a more solid business case to the Park and Ride Go station in Breslau, and it does connect that dot between all of this piece and the stage 2 ion. So I'm quite thrilled to see this. I know that Mayor and Council in Cambridge is fully supportive of doing everything that we can to advance this important project and these important projects just as quickly as we can. We'll continue to also reach out, and we have done in all of our pre-budget submissions for the Ontario budget. And anytime we've been in front of the Minister for Transportation or Metrolinx, we've continued from the Cambridge side to really promote the business case to complete that, and also to continue to complete the pieces to make that all-day two-way go a reality. And the last thing I will say is that I'm delighted to see all this. The pieces are starting to fit together, and we'll be as supportive as we can. This is a very exciting project, and I think a once in a lifetime to really position us all well, both the city as well as the region, for success in the future.
Thank you, Councillor McGarry. Chair Redman, would you like to speak?
I can just tag on to what Catherine was saying. I think that there has to be a narrative, and I think we have an amazing narrative, and I think that's the story that we need to put in the front window, and we all need to be talking about Waterloo economic development. Tony's told me that people in Germany have asked how close we are to Yonge and Eglinton subway stop. So they don't get the geography, but we have a compelling story, and this is much greater than the parts. So I just really exciting to see the narrative come together and the vision.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I'm not seeing any more hands up, but I think you're feeling the energy. I really think today could have been a bow tie day, Rod. I don't know why you don't have it on. Anyway, so thanks everybody. Much appreciated. Thanks for the presentation, Rod. There's no information or correspondence. I'm going to make a call for other. Oh, sorry, Catherine. Councillor McGarry.
Thank you. I was just wondering if this slide presentation was available yet for all of us to reflect upon. I might frame it, but just wondering if it will be available that we could have a copy of it.
Yeah, we'll certainly send out a copy to you for sure. Yep.
Okay, so that's coming out to us. Okay, so call for any other business? And seeing none, I'm looking for, well, I actually have the motion. Councillor Galloway, seconded by Councillor Kiefer. Please use your yes and no button to say goodbye till later. Couple hours. See you soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Chair. Bye.
See ya. Bye.